but it's all in love. It's all in creating that trust. So when they look in your eyes, they say, I can trust mom. I can trust grandma. I can trust my dad and my uncle. They love me. They care about me, because it's not about getting the good grades. It's about developing trust. It's about developing a heart-to-heart connection where eventually they grow up and they're like, I can depend on that person. And that's what I try to do, with my family and friends and anybody that I'm around, because I remember being 7 years old or 11 years old and, being treated with disrespect by school teachers. And just thinking like, is this what this life is about? This is weird. And then you get out, you learn about John Taylor Gatto and these other people, and you're like, I knew something was fishy in the schools. And it's because it's compulsory. I call it forced school. I think that's a more accurate term. You're forced to attend. You're forced to do homework. They threaten you with the detention or even removing your 15 minutes of recess, if you don't stay silent in class, right? And this is the kind of the irony of people when they say socialization. Oh, my kids, I want to send my kids to public school to be socialized. But you need permission to talk, and you don't get to collaborate with your neighbor. They call that cheating in the school system. So, there's different definitions that you want to focus on, but also it is a very expensive system. This is a $700 billion a year system, and there's a lot of money involved. You mentioned before the largest political lobby in the country, over 3 million members, the National Education Association. Again, not to demonize teachers, because teachers are loving people in general, but any systems based on compulsion, on coercion, is criminal, it's immoral, and it's just a matter of time till this system goes away. But these criminals were behind the state. I think they were trying to figure out some other way. We just saw in California, the governor of California said that there's going to be remote learning up until January. So who knows what they're trying to do, but deep down, we know from the records that we've seen, they're trying to destroy free will, trying to destroy your child's mind, make them a slave, and feel like they have to get permission to exercise their freedoms. And I think you're either a free person or you're a slave, and your child will start learning that at a young age as you start discussing these things inside the house. Well, let me just mention something about the grades, because I think the grades are really a big issue for parents, and they're like, well, how am I going to measure if my child's up to par or if they're ahead or behind? Well, think about your own experience, mom and dad. When was the last time somebody asked you about your grades in high school, or last time they made an important decision based on your grades from high school, let alone college? So you want to take a kind of a deep breath and realize your child is on their own path and their own course in life. And this is actually the root of the word curriculum, is course, a path. So if your child's on their own unique path and journey, then it's up to them to kind of learn to meander and find out, what is interesting. So if you can consider getting rid of, my child's at this grade level reading or this level, they're at their level. And I think that the lesson of life is love, and the world is the classroom, as we mentioned. So there's bigger things that we can go after. Of course, you want to practice self-discipline and courage and humility and loyalty and all these great things, but those things are acquired voluntarily. You can't force somebody to respect people. You can't force somebody to love people. I guess you can if you got, weapons, but it's not real. And so we're talking about a heart-to-heart connection. There's a mass human awakening of consciousness, realizing our own divine power or sacredness, or however you refer to it. And like, your child is important just as you are. And so as they feel that from your eyes and your tone and your words, they're going to step into that and say, wow, I am important. Yes, I'm a 7-year-old young girl, but I can do it because of you. And you look in their eyes and you help them realize they can do great things. It might take some years. You're planting seeds and planting that faith inside of them. But at one point, they're going to take the steering wheel of their own life, and they're going to say, thanks, Mom. Off I go. And they're going to go do some amazing stuff and travel. And you say, no, come back home. So once you give them those wings, then you got to be prepared to let them fly away from the nest, because they will come back. Once that love, that trust is connected at your heart level, I believe that those children do come back and they're like, man, I'm so grateful you gave me freedom and these kind of things. So it's definitely hard raising children, but I think if you can think about their path and not compare them to other people or yourself when you were growing up, I mean, these are different times. So have some faith that they will figure out their way, and don't worry about grades and all these test scores that we've been fooled into thinking that they matter, because they really don't.
That Dr. Vernon Coleman, we've listened to a lot of his work, but he has shared that he observed that the education system has, in his opinion, been in such a decline for the past 150 years. And he believes it's better to do nothing than have a child in school, in public school, and has said the best way to fail at homeschooling, in his opinion, would be to follow the public school model. Would you care to speak to that? And I also wanted to ask you, David, that say a parent is, they're on the fence of whether or not the public school system is a good fit for their child or children. Say they wanted to transition to homeschooling. How is that done? Logistics, what do you need to do? Send a letter to the school saying I'm going to withdraw my child? How can the truant officer follow them? Are there any repercussions from the legal system? Is there compulsory education? I don't really understand how all that works. So I threw a lot at you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So bring me back to the Vernon question here in a second here.
Okay.
But in terms of like all the paperwork, so there's two areas that I focus on. One is the paperwork and the legal side, and this is, give the letter to the school or fill out the form online or do what you do that side. So there's the legal side of it. And then there's the how-to side. Like, what am I going to do now that my child's at my kitchen table? And I think one of the biggest mistakes parents have when they start homeschooling, they think they have to be the master teacher, so it's like, okay, it's time for math and language. And it's, you got to do what you call, back to the Vernon question, is school at home. That's what I call when you say it's okay, you got the math textbook and you got all these different curriculums we're going to do based on time, based on force, effectively. Say, hey, if you want to go outside and play, Susie, then you have to do this today. You have to do your homework. You have to do all these things. That kills the love of learning that they have. They already love learning, mom and dad, so you don't have to do anything. What you do is you find that one thing that adds fuel to that fire of curiosity that's already there, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so interested. Because one of the skills of success is concentration. And you know this as being successful adults out there. If you can focus on something for 3 hours, 5 hours, however long, and you really are enjoying it, you will become proficient at it. You will become competent. You will become a master if you do that for years. And then let's say they're 10 years old or 12 years old playing video games or playing their guitar or something that you think is a waste of time. Well, maybe when they're 15 or 18, they shift that concentration. And then it goes into computer programming, or it goes into anything else that you think is a good career. Wow, I guess they learn to concentrate. So you want to take kind of a meta approach, not necessarily what they're doing, but what skills are they learning? I mentioned self-discipline earlier, right? This is one of the skills that we're always working on, myself included. But as you study successful people who make a difference with their life and actually contribute to mankind, they learn to be disciplined in some way. And this could be athletes or business people or musicians or whoever, but somebody who adds to the value, to the store of knowledge for the human family. They're disciplined. They have ability to concentrate usually. So just understand that school at home is better than school in the school building, but still, I would recommend you learn about some of these things we're talking about, learn about the history, and really get a handle on, what it's going to take for you. And what I tell my clients is, don't think of yourself as a teacher. Think of yourself as a facilitator, as a guide, as a coach, as a learning partner, someone who's a co-creator with your child. Because if you're an educated adult, then you are still learning. Life is learning. I mean, my gosh, how many things will we not learn before we pass away? Like, there's too much to learn, especially now with the internet. So that's the other part, is that be all those things that I mentioned, but then have your own learning project going on too. So when your child comes up to you and you're doing your garden project or you're doing the roof project, you're doing something, they're like, I want to learn from you, mom or dad or uncle or grandma. I want to learn. Okay, come on. And so this is an opportunity where you can actually have them help and explain to them what's going on. So even though they might paint the house sloppily and you might have to go back and paint it over again or whatever, focus on their mind and their heart and what are they learning. I say, okay, I said this. Now, okay, let's see how you do. Okay, well, that's pretty good. You can give them some critique, but it's all in love. It's all in creating that trust. So when they look in your eyes, they say, I can trust mom. I can trust grandma. I can trust my dad and my uncle. They love me. They care about me, because it's not about getting the good grades. It's about developing trust. It's about developing a heart-to-heart connection where eventually they grow up and they're like, I can depend on that person. And that's what I try to do, you know, with my family and friends and anybody that I'm around, because I remember being 7 years old or 11 years old and, you know, being treated with disrespect by school teachers and just thinking like, is this what this life is about? This is weird. And then you get out, you learn about John Taylor Gatto and these other people, and you're like, I knew something was fishy in the schools, and it's because it's compulsory. I call it forced school. I think that's a more accurate term. You're forced to attend. You're forced to do homework. They threaten you with the detention or even removing your 15 minutes of recess, you know, if you don't stay silent in class, right? And this is the kind of the irony of people when they say socialization. Oh, my kids, I want to send my kids to public school to be socialized. But you need permission to talk, and you don't get to collaborate with your neighbor. They call that cheating in the school system. So, you know, there's different definitions that you want to focus on, but also it is a very expensive system. This is a $700 billion a year system, and there's a lot of money involved. You mentioned before the largest political lobby in the country, over 3 million members, the National Education Association. Again, not to demonize teachers, because teachers are loving people in general, but any systems based on compulsion, on coercion is criminal, it's immoral, and it's just a matter of time till this system goes away. But these criminals were behind the state. I think they're gonna try to figure out some other way. We just saw in California, the governor of California said that there's gonna be remote learning up until January. So who knows what they're trying to do, but deep down, you know, we know from the records that we've seen, they're trying to destroy free will, trying to destroy your child's mind, make them a slave, and feel like they have to get permission to exercise their freedoms. And I think you're either a free person or you're a slave, and your child will start learning that at a young age as you start discussing these things inside the house.
But with Vernon Coleman, 150 years, you think he was pretty much on track with his philosophy of that?
Yeah, I do. And this is how you know someone's a good researcher, because they go back to the origins of the organization. And I want to share something about that 10-year-old girl that you mentioned, who they want to go hug their teacher. I saw a video, must have been maybe 7 or 8 year old. They were cousins, you know, a little boy and a girl. And, you know, they couldn't hug each other. And then finally, you know, I guess the parents decided, okay, the virus has gone down, whatever, so now they can hug each other. And so they're like waiting, and then they're like, yay, they get to hug each other, and they start hugging each other, and they just start sobbing and crying, because the heart space is what we need as humans, right? We've been in our head for so long and working to the left side and logic, but then now the right side and the creative and the emotion and the love, it wants to come out. And so funny enough, we actually been doing peaceful noncompliance on the beaches out here in California and Santa Cruz area. And we actually reversed some of the county officers' orders by noncompliance. And the officer said on the record, the people refused to be governed. And so we've been doing this for like basically all summer, and we're gonna keep doing it. And then we're working on another project. I think we're gonna do it tomorrow or maybe Friday. And I think we're going to call it the free hug experience. But the whole idea is to go out there and give hugs to people randomly with permission and consent. But like, I just feel emotional thinking about this project, because I miss hugs too. You know, I'm not married. I don't have any, significant other to hug. You know, my family lives far away. So just the importance of touch and hugging. And this is, of course, there isn't a global pandemic. If anything, it's a little virus flu. But you mentioned Dr. Andy Kaufman. He's coming out saying it doesn't look like anything, you know, because the science isn't even there. So that's even a more, more powerful, perspective on it. But I think what they're doing is trying to isolate adults and children and to normalize totalitarianism. And, they keep saying, hey, this is the new normal until the vaccines get here. And after so many politicians and figureheads say that on TV, they're like, oh, this is the new normal until vaccines. And then the vaccines, you're like, okay, we can see, we can put the pieces together and realize that this is not a safe thing. And you look at the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act that protects vaccine manufacturers from liability. Now, mom and dad, how is it possible in 2020, there's a company out there, a whole industry that can make a faulty product they're going to mandate inject to your child, as it is in over 10 states. It's a mandatory vaccine law to go to public school. They mandate school, they mandate vaccines, and then they exempt the vaccine manufacturers from any responsibility or liability. So what's going to happen? That's going to be more of what's going to happen. And I even heard Bill Gates talk about the 7 billion doses that they're going to try to come out with. But as long as people keep having these conversations and seek truth and speak truth, I don't think their plan is going to work, but they're going for broke. They're very desperate. This is a Hail Mary, and the kids are going to get the blunt force of this trauma.
David, you've been so great with your timing. I don't know if we want to touch about data mining. I understand, for example, I was blown away. I heard the statistic that it takes 4 billion gallons of water a day to cool the computers in a new data center where data on children is stored. And have you heard of this? And do you know how children's personal data is collected in school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't heard that great visual of how hot those computers might be getting, but I do know that they do label students. There's gifted and special ed and medium and bright and advanced placement and all these different things, and then they tag them, and then different universities and different programs tap students. And this is what the Rhodes Scholars are about. And the International Baccalaureate Program. They are raising up new leaders to, lead the world in a way. And what's so interesting about the global state is I thought it was like something they're going to build, but I think it's built behind the scenes. And now, like in terms of the media is global, the financial, the healthcare, these things are like behind the scenes. And then what we see is the mainstream news. And just in the past 20 years with the internet, maybe in the last 10 years, with having some kind of independent journalists that can actually go out and do guerrilla journalism to find the truth. They had a monopoly for over 100 years to control the minds of people. And even the 1920s book called Propaganda by Edward Bernays goes through and says that the tastes and the flavors and what the preferences you have aren't chosen by you. It's decided by people behind the scenes that you never even met before. So they know the power of propaganda, and the vaccines are a really critical part. And I want to read this one from 1953, Bertrand Russell, The Impact of Science on Society. Quote, diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to prepare or to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable. And any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Even if all are miserable, all will believe themselves happy because the government will tell them that they are so, end quote. So this is, 60 years ago, almost 70 years ago. They're putting it in their own little small publications. And behind me, you see a book, Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. He was the mentor for Bill Clinton. And of course, Bill Clinton's a Rhodes Scholar and, a criminal in his own right. And it's just really important that you understand this didn't just happen overnight, but we're seeing kind of almost the dawn of it coming. But these guys aren't going to win for sure. This is why they're using force, and they're using the governors, and the governors are acting like dictators. Very open for anybody who understands basic freedom, basic human rights or natural rights. These guys are trying to strip away our freedoms using coercion and using their order followers. And I think it's pretty clear for many of us that they're not playing around. So I think that's why maybe you and some of your listeners, myself and some of my friends, we're not going to sit here and be enslaved and let our kids be forced to take a chip or to do what they're going to do. Not going to comply. We're not going to cooperate, and we're not going to stay silent. And so if they want a war for freedom, then they have one. This is what they've created, but they've slowly been building up to it. And, George Bush Sr. talked about a new world order. And then James Warburg, talked about this on the Senate floor in the 50s about a global government coming by conquest or consent. It's inevitable. But I think their arrogance is kind of some of their weak points. And human life, the spirit of humanity wants to be free. We want to love. We want to grow. And this is what's happening as parents pull out their children from the school system one by one. Talk with other people and overcome your fear, because this is how they control us, through fear, not through actual weapons or actual threats, but through fear of threats or fear of doing something that they're going to come and take our child away. But as you start building your network of support and people that you can trust and understand that these guys are playing for all the marbles, they're playing for all the chips, and it's really time to stand up and speak up. You mentioned Agenda 2030. Right? This is, kind of the new phase from 1992. And they even have, I think, Agenda 2050 or some goals for 2050, right? So planning out everything. These guys plan out everything, and then they just expect you guys to be apathetic, to not take action. But really taking action of any kind is going to be worth it, I think, and it's going to give you some return on investment there, because now is the time to do something. And even if you have a 5-year-old, start learning about these homeschooling approaches, because you'll probably need this in the next 2, 3, 5 years for your own child. Yeah, so we've learned just to go and have a conversation with these people. They're just doing their job, and they don't know what they don't know. So actually, they've been brainwashed. That's what the media and the government has done to them. They're actually victims of the propaganda. So I find more compassion for these people. They're really afraid. They've done zero research or very little research into the actual facts of the pandemic. And, myself and some friends, we've gone into hospitals and looked at it. So we just say, what? I have a medical exemption. I have a serious health condition. Does this place respect medical exemptions? Most of them say yes. Feel free to shop. And some of them say, no, you stand away. You're not taking this seriously. And I'm like, well, I'll leave, but I'm never come back here again. And I try to stay nice and friendly. But this is another way we can fight back, is through economic boycotts, through intentional economics. Give money to people who support freedom, who support you. And so that's the bit about the mask. So we can put the link below. But just in wrapping up, I think for this conversation, mom and dad, homeschooling is a proven method for helping your child become educated. You don't have to be the master teacher, and it's been proven for thousands of years. It's the forced schooling system, which is new, and it's been just demonstrated how harmful it is to children over the last 150 years, and it's not going to get better. And let me quote John Taylor Gatto, the great teacher. He said, all the time and energy you spend trying to reform the system is waste. And he's there for 3 decades because he cares about children. He wants to help empower young people. And so those are his words. So I'm creating something called the GATTO Project. And that is an acronym for Get All the Thinkers Out of Forced Schools. And it's going to be a combination of the homeschooling and the apprenticeship programs there. So whatever you're looking for, you can come, get some support, get some new ideas, get some confidence, get some community of people who aren't going to leave you by yourself. And that's really what it's about, is once you feel like there's other people who have gone this route before you, and there's people with you now and people coming behind you, you start to understand your child can really achieve and pursue a great education without the compulsory nature. And for some of the people who can't do it because of either finances, or you're a single parent, or you're super afraid, just having the conversation about the origins of the system. It was designed to create obedient soldiers, factory workers, clerks. This is on record. Take a look at the book and some of the links that we're going to have here in the description, and then let that seed be there. So when your child's in the school, they're like, why is there a bell every 40 minutes? Or why do I need permission to get a drink of water? they can say, oh, this is what mom was talking about. Okay, I'm starting to understand. This is a social mechanism to create obedience within society. And they don't want innovators. They don't want creative scientists and engineers and all these people that cause real change in society. They want to keep it the way it is. They want to chip us, get rid of cash, and make us slaves in perpetuity. And you don't want that for your child, and neither do I. And so thanks for having me on, Christine, and hopefully we can come back and have some updates, whatever's going on in the world. And thanks for being a champion for freedom and for truth. And we're going to keep building the voluntary world, one relationship at a time.
Thank you, David. What a great wrap up. You're just such a wealth, and it's such a treasure to have you among us. And I will ask you to help me create some links below that people can have more information. I hadn't heard about the GATTO project, so we're looking forward to sharing more on that. And by the way, the video you shared about the two cousins hugging, I have a clip to that along with permission from one of their mothers that it's okay to share. So I'll be sharing that along with a clip from you in the stores. So this is going to be a very rich, we'll probably have it be a little series here. But with that, David, thank you so much. And just let's keep up the great work. And bye for now, everyone.